Tim Walz, but it's on Gavin Newsom's podcast Tuesday.
You got to respect people you disagree with, and you can't just dismiss people.
How do you fight it?
This notion
I think
of
I could kick most of their ass. I do think that if they want to do it. I know I can go wrong, but I don't know if we're going to fall into that place where we want to. Okay, we challenge you to a WWE fight here type of thing.
No, but it's a natural reaction. I think it's one of the reasons we're losing so many men. And again, it's multi-ethnic. It's not just white men. We're losing them. We're losing them to these guys online. That's why I brought.
These are bad guys, though. These are bad guys.
But they exist, and we could deny they exist. They exist. Not only they exist, they persist, and they're actually influencing young kids every single day.
How do we push some of those guys back under a rock?
I think we have to first understand what their motivations are. I think we have to understand what they're actually doing. And
you don't
I think
think
that's
it's racism and misogyny?
That there's everything in there, right? Like, I'm going to kick their ass. Okay, sure, Jan.
Here's the line people are shouting in the comments right now. Megyn Kelly didn't critique Governor Tim Walz. She torched him on air and left the studio smelling like smoke. That's the headline. That's the news. A nationally known broadcaster just cracked open the carefully wrapped Minnesota Nice package and said, "Look inside. This isn't steady leadership. It's steady spin." And if you think that's too harsh, stay with me, because tonight we're going to test every claim she made against the image his team keeps selling. If he's being floated for a...
First of all, it was up to him. I wouldn't have a family because of IVF. My kids were born through that, that way.
His campaign office in April mailed out a fundraising letter that read, "My wife and I used IVF." That's a quote. They are now clarifying that they used IUI. The defense of all this, he was using commonly understood shorthand for fertility treatments. In vitro fertilization is different from IUI, intrauterine insemination. And the only reason to say they're the same thing, to say you got IVF when you really had IUI, political purposes. He wanted to land a political hit on J.D. Vance to perpetuate the lie that he wants to ban IVF.
That's the thing, even with this IUI, IVF, even the command sergeant major rank, even this DUI story, lying about how fast he's going. All of these lies are finally catching up to this guy because the press has kept them hidden here locally for so long.
Bigger national role. The stakes aren't local potholes anymore. They're national decisions with national consequences. So, yes, this matters now. And yes, you're going to hear receipts. Here's your roadmap. First, the pandemic whiplash that small businesses still taste like pennies in the mouth. Then,
that term's been thrown around quite a bit when it comes to Governor Tim Walz, the running mate of Kamala Harris, in this race in connection with his National Guard service. Many men who served with Governor Walz when he was in the National Guard and who served under him have come forward to accuse him of that sin, stealing valor from the men he served with by inflating his military rank and by abandoning.
the veteran narrative critics say doesn't match the timeline. After that, Minneapolis, ground zero, cameras rolling, the week the world watched. We'll loop in crime, schools, taxes, and the odd couple buddy pitch with Kamala Harris. Expectation versus reality. Point by point. Quick proof we're not just dealing in vibes. Even his defenders admit the orders during COVID zigzagged. Even his bio can't outrun the controversy around.
You raise your hand if you think Tim Walz is guilty of cutting and running as opposed to serving in Iraq.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Around when he retired from the Guard. And even his press conferences from 2020 can't obscure the footage of a city pleading for action while leadership hesitated. If you came for a polite panel show, wrong video. If you came for clarity, buckle in, click confirmed. Megyn Kelly called out Tim Walz. The public sentiment boiling under that clip goes something like this. He talks like a neighbor, but governs like a...
The team comes on the field, we will all stand up and cheer. To the other team we'll never yield, and we won't forget we're here. We will fight for victory, and when we will conquer every...
committee. That's the expectation. Here's the contrarian twist Kelly drove at. This steady hand wasn't steady at all. It was a hand hovering over the pause button, then slamming fast forward, then back to pause, leaving people dizzy. And the question we'll keep asking is simple. When the job turned from ribbon cuttings to hard calls, Did the governor make them or make another task force? Let's start with the second strongest card because it sets the table. Pandemic leadership. Picture it, Main Street, Minnesota. Open signs turning to closed to open with rules to closed again until we figure it out.
Just a regular guy. This is how they keep trying to pass him off as. And it's amazing to me how he has so drastically changed in the last couple of weeks at these rallies. This animated character, jazzed up, coming out, bouncing around. I mean, this is a totally different person than I've covered before. It is wild to see this transformation.
That's interesting because the whole, he's kicking everything around and he's super enthusiastic.
We've never seen this guy before.
Felt like a high school group project where the plan changed every third text. 1 week, a business was a threat to public health. The next, it was essential if you stood on a sticker. The human story got lost. Servers crying in their cars after double shifts that didn't exist anymore. Owners staring at empty tables like they'd lost a family member. Application. Leadership in a crisis isn't just issuing orders. It's making them coherent, defensible, and fair enough that people can follow them without needing a legal pad. Framing. Expectation versus reality.
Bad guys, the online influencers. He's clearly talking about, sort of the manosphere that helped get Trump elected. They're bad. And then how do we kick them back under a rock? The leftist instinct to silence, always there when it's not their POV. And then just the cherry on top, they're all racists and misogynists. You couldn't, if I sent you into a back room with a bot and you were to program it to say the things that the left believes about the right half of America, that's what you'd come out with.
Expectation was steady guidance. Reality looked like policy whack-a-mole. And every time the mallet came down, people's livelihoods were the moles. Hold that thought. We're going to circle back to how that same rhythm shows up in schools and crime. Now the strongest card, because this is the one that sticks in people's throats, the veteran storyline. Kelly's critique zeroed in on what critics have called stolen valor light, the suggestion that the resume glow didn't match the timeline. The allegation is straightforward. He retired from the National Guard right before his unit deployed to Iraq, yet still leans into the veteran mantle as political armor. Context: Americans don't play loose with uniforms. Every stripe is a story. Every deployment is a calendar you never forget. Application: when a politician presents service as the moral underpinning for decision-making, the details stop being decoration and start being core. Framing: expectation versus reality again. Expectation was the sturdy tale of sacrifice. Reality, according to critics Kelly amplified, looks like a strategic exit followed by a decades-long PR halo. And that disconnect isn't academic. It threads into how people judge his hesitation when Minneapolis begged for action. File that in your mental drawer. We pay it off in a moment. Back to Minneapolis. Cinematic detail: the air tasted like ash. Helicopters chopped slow circles in the sky. A pawn shop burned like a lighthouse in reverse. And shop owners stood guard in front of their life savings with garden hoses and sleepless eyes. The world's camera was locked on one city. That was the test. This is where the expectation versus reality theme gets loud. Expectation: calm, decisive, visible leadership. Reality: in the eyes of critics like Kelly, a governor who waited, workshopped, and hand-wrung while a major American city ran out of nights to lose. The National Guard, men and women who train for nightmare weeks like that, sat on the other side of a decision that didn't come fast enough. Application: leaders make imperfect moves on imperfect information, but they make them. Framing: this wasn't restraint. It read as absence. And absence leaves a scar. Let's run a quick callback to the pandemic segment because the pattern matters. The same indecisive rhythm, pause, sprint, pause, shows up in crime policy. Minnesota tried the "we're listening" approach until the streets started talking back in sirens and boarded windows. Imagine governing a city like it's a graduate seminar, lots of talking, lots of theory, lots of whiteboard flowcharts, and then realizing the test is outside where someone just had their car taken at a stoplight. Application: crime doesn't negotiate. It responds to certainty, to visible boundaries, to the sense that someone is actually at the wheel. Framing: expectation versus reality. Expectation: Minnesota values will carry us. Reality. Values without visible enforcement invite opportunists to write the next chapter. Schools. If you're a parent, your stomach just tightened. Minnesota's classrooms, under the grand banner of "We Are Investing," produced report cards that read like a shrug. Reading and math scores slid, while the bureaucracy bought new buzzwords. You could almost hear the statewide reply. We didn't ask for new slogans, we asked for our kids to read. Context. A decade from now, no one will care how inspirational the mission statement sounded if a generation walks into job interviews unable to add up the bill. Application. Leadership means aligning dollars with outcomes and telling adults in the room what happens when outcomes don't show up. Framing. Expectation versus reality again. Expectation. Record funding equals record learning. Reality. Record funding equals record furniture orders. Bookmark that. We're about to connect it to taxes. Taxes and the economy. Another place where the script and the sequel don't match. Minnesota's tax burden climbs. Families eye the border like it's an escape hatch. The promise was premium service for premium rates. The reality, to many residents, feels like paying for a 5-star suite and getting handed a key to a cot under the stairs. Potholes that could swallow a compact car, crime stats that don't sleep, and schools that can't carry their weight. Where exactly did the money go? Application. When a state becomes a showroom for big price, vague product, shoppers go elsewhere. Framing. This is more than policy. It's a brand problem. The brand says we take care of our own. The experience whispers, unless you're a spreadsheet. Now, the partnership pitch that had the country doing a double take. Tim Walz rumored as the steady half to Kamala Harris on a national ticket. Picture the press conference. 2 podiums, a dozen flags, and a promise to restore confidence and calm. Kelly's point, and the public's raised eyebrow, wasn't subtle. If your Zoom is built on committees, press releases, and a talent for sounding reasonable while promising another study, are you the ballast or just more ballast? Application. The vice presidency isn't a warm chair. It's a contingency plan. Framing. Expectation versus reality. National edition. Expectation. Middle America's steadiness scales up. Reality. Critics argue. Middle management in a chief's chair. And we need to talk about the voice. The "I speak like regular people" line that sounds good on a bumper sticker and bad under a spotlight. Regular people do not use their neighbors' lives as props. They don't round up their resumes. They don't promise to convene when the street outside is asking for a decision in plain English. Kelly's gloves-off point was that the folksy tone can't carry the freight of real outcomes. It's the political version of lukewarm soup, safe, bland, technically food, and utterly forgettable until you realize you've been sipping it for years and calling it dinner. Pattern interrupt, because you're probably noticing the drumbeat. Indecision here, ambiguity there, committees everywhere. Let's flip the camera around. What would expectation meeting reality look like if the roles were reversed? In a crisis, a time-stamped call, National Guard on the move, nightly briefings that actually say something, businesses given 5-day look-aheads that survive court scrutiny, schools with transparent dashboards that tie pay to results, and a tax plan that tells you in one sentence what you get for what you pay. Notice how none of that requires a new task force? It requires choices. Choices are oxygen. Process is paperwork.